Hey there, good citizens of the cannabis community. It's a good day here on the Infused Show. It's a good day every day I get to spend with Francesca. How are you today? My God.
I am doing very well. It is towards the end of the day, the lovely day. We're here with a good conversation. So I'm psyched. I'm pumped. I'm ready. Let's go.
I'm pumped because of who's joining us today. Today, the Infused Show, the little show from the Beast Coast here in slower, lower Delaware. We're extending our reach all the way out so that we can knock on the golden door of California and say hello and offer a warm welcome to our special guest today. This gentleman that we have on the show today is the founder and president of C1D1 Labs. He's a busy guy. He's a great guy that believes in doing things the right way. And let me say this, we need more people like that in this industry. Let's give a very warm welcome to Alex Barsky. Alex, thank you for joining us.
Woo!
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate you, Francesca. Thank you for having us.
Oh, no, it's really, we appreciate you making time for us today. We know you're a busy guy. How you been?
Busy.
Yeah.
Busy is great, moving forward every day. Grateful for another year in the industry.
That's awesome.
We're definitely making strides and we're excited to keep moving forward.
That's fantastic. Now, who's joining us now today with you, Alex? Who's the pup?
So this is Mia. She's definitely a C1D1 Labs mascot. Traveling around at conferences or at your laboratory, chances are I've been with this little one.
She's adorable.
Adorable. We appreciate the cameo, Mia. Check is in the mail. I got to say, on the three of us combined, today's show is brought to you by allergies. It's allergy season all over. And Alex and I were talking, it looks like Alex and I suffer from the same thing. We're going to do our best to keep that at bay today for our listeners. Alex, we've got so much we want to talk about today, but I think the first thing I wanted to get into was our audience would be very, very interested in how in your journey into cannabis as a place where you were working and productive. So you started out here on the Beast Coast. We're about 10 minutes from Maryland. How did you start your journey and wind up out in California?
I started my journey young. Definitely in high school is when I definitely got into smaller scale cannabis. And then as things became larger and larger, I gained more interest in having sorry about that, guys.
No apologies.
Having more cannabis power and revenue, making that more my main focus rather than being an auxiliary focus in my life. When I was younger, I got arrested a few times in Maryland due to their laws on possession, and that pushed me through 4 or 5 different high schools and rehabs, inpatient rehab for cannabis, wilderness programs, all for like $1 gram.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. I never really did great with P tests either. So probation probably wasn't for me, but I got motivated through the process of going through the judicial system and then the rehabilitation system, and eventually the pharmaceutical, as these rehabs put me on Xanax and other pills to remove my need to smoke cannabis because I was self-medicating for my anxiety.
What a backwards ass protocol.
I know. I haven't ever seen her taking Xanax, but it's on the scale of mess you up. Compared to cannabis, it's night and day. I mean, you can't even remember what you just ate, if you're even eating on these drugs. And for me, it was an eye-opening experience as to, not everyone really cares about you. These industries that are literally developed to help, people from their addictions and so on are actually feeding pharmaceutical addictions one way or the other. So for at a young age, I wanted to do something different, right? And for me, my belief was in cannabis. Throughout the entire process, I was always kind of like that. And when I freed myself from the probation in Maryland and went to California, that was the first thing I did. I went to Oroville and I kind of chased down, a deeper learning and understanding of the plant.
Wow. And then from there, were you Were you growing and then got into extraction? Were you always interested in extraction? Like, what was that piece like?
So I definitely did my time on the farms.
Yeah, I figure you have to almost.
I guess everyone really starts trimming, right?
Yeah.
Someone who grows and you jump on their farm and you hang around the master growers and you kind of follow them around the daily routines and you sit in the trim room and get to know the plant, right? And that's where it all started for me. When I did about 4 or 5 of these jobs, for me, I kind of wanted something different. I was then living in Oakland at the time and ran into an old friend of mine. We started a company together, Golden Bear Concentrates, back in the day. It was one of the first licenses to go from medicinal to recreational. And that's where I got the majority of my extraction experience, was starting one of these developing facilities that, was one of the first of its kind in a place like California. From there, it was really teaching and developing the standards and creating an education ladder for the fire departments and building departments and engineers to adapt what we wanted to do as extraction companies.
So you've always had a pretty good relationship with places like the Oakland Fire Department. It looks like your work is very much focused on let's stay ahead of the game, right? When it comes to regulatory standards and things like that, working in conjunction with local authorities like that.
Yeah, that's how we got a lot of our traction, right? They've done similar industries, oil and gas, spray paint booths, and all these other things. But the entire process of extraction includes several different post-processing, initial extraction techniques, and fire codes that are evolved around all these different standard operating procedures. And without any applicable knowledge, it's very difficult for a municipality to create any sort of realistic ordinance requirements for permitting any sort of building, right? So that's where we came in. We brought a fire protection engineer who at the time was a California fire marshal, and he contacted all the other fire marshals. We got everyone together in one room, and we sat everyone down and we went over the brand new NFPA codes that came out. NFPA NFPA 1 chapter 38, in addition to 33 and all 58 and all these other codes that go around storing and using flammable gases and alcohols, flammable liquids. By then creating and showing what we used as a fire hazard analysis report, which is a complete overview of the fire codes that are involved in the design of the facility, and sharing it with the fire marshals and building departments that went to this meeting. After they had then learned from us the different codes that were applicable, it kind of completed the circle of how to apply the codes in a design and what a standard report for technical report should look like for one of these facilities, which they then used as their standard for applications. At that time, we then also released, obviously, these services of fire protection services and architectural engineering services to those friends and close companies that we were working with, so that they could also get through the system as fast as possible.
Wow. So you really, I love that you guys, C1D1 is really setting the standard. And what I love about that is that you got in early enough that you had influence in a place that's really important to have influence, in that safety, in that professional excellence. And as somebody who is the authority on extraction, was that something that you had kind of knew when you went in to do this? Were you like, okay, I know we want to be the authority, we want to set the standard, we want to be involved in making sure all of this makes sense from a cannabis perspective, so we're going to be the ones? No,
I did not want to, not at all. That's a big bite, right?
Yeah, it is.
I went from making extracts in a lab to writing codes and standards. That's going to right field, but I needed to. It was absolutely necessary for the industry. There's one company that was doing 100% of this before me, and they were creating an extremely high barrier of entry that none of my friends could afford or go through. These guys are making more money slowing people down, adding more of their services, adding more of their time, and then getting people across the finish line, which neither the municipality wants, because then they're not going to get any money from permitting these facilities, which takes years for them at that time, or we're not going to make any money not getting permitted, right? So at the time, I found out that equipment was being certified by one company. So there was only a group of equipment manufacturers that had these certifications that were charging outrageous amounts of money. So the C1D1 rooms were going anywhere between $150,000 to $200,000. We brought it all the way down to $40,000. And how we did that is we used our own third-party engineering. And these guys, these engineers had already been in contact with the fire department. So had already shown massive experience in their credentials and experience in these laboratories, that when we started developing ASME equipment certifications and extraction room certifications to lower the barrier of entry, these municipalities quickly adapted them and trusted them and showed them that we could also be approved engineers to the secondary company in places like Long Beach and LA County, which then opened up our engineering services for equipment all over the world. We did the first certification for Lunatech, which was a completely fully automatic butane system. And we've done a handful of Frankenstein certifications where extractors have their own compliant ASME equipment, and we're able to certify theirs. And of course, we have our own butane extraction equipment here with C1D1 Labs that are also certified by these third-party engineers and bring down the cost to these systems and bring the ease to acceptance, which every extractor wants.
Yeah, that's something that you definitely taught us, I think, a while ago, is that when we first entered into this space, I remember hearing butane extraction is the cheaper way to do it, as in that's a bad thing, as in like that's the kind of dirty, cheap way to extract, and CO2 extraction is the cleanest, also the most expensive, and I have a couple other options, it sounds like, with cold press and a couple other things, solventless, and I don't know as much about it as
for those of us still worrying about ROI and making money in the industry, cheap is not bad. It is clean. Absolutely clean extraction. It's been used in several industries. We remove it to a certain parts per million. It's a healthy product. And honestly, when you remove the fats and lipids, which you see in other products, which are the carcinogens, and you're not smoking that in your product, you're actually dealing with a much cleaner product. Right.
So it's so interesting. So it's a complete fucking myth, and it has to do with the quality of the extraction process, not like, I guess it has to do with the people and the process more than the medium.
The first ones to make money normally try to set their standard, right?
Yes.
I did it for the industry and for the people in the industry. Other companies and influencers normally do it for them to make money, right? So for example, CO2 companies came in and they were teaching exactly what you said about butane's not safe. Look at these explosions in garages. We should be using CO2, which runs thousands of PSI, right? So if something comes off that machine, it's flying off that machine, versus like a low pressure butane system, which runs between 300 and maybe 150 PSI, or between 30 and 150 PSI. So a cryogenic product without the fats and lipids at a much lower pressure in a extraction room, which I'm going to throw out there, we've never had someone hurt themselves in one of these extraction. 150 rooms have been built. The difference is they're comparing it to traditional market garage builds, right? Which is a complete gap of education, because you're not really educating them on what could be done. And that's what I did. These CO2 companies were charging millions of dollars for their systems and isolating the industry towards people who could only afford that. I mean, if you've been paying attention in the past few years, have really been a shine on, okay, who knows how to make good product, right? And who can make the best product? And those are our friends in the industry that have been since day one, who have been screaming out how to make the best product for years and years and years and years, and now we're finally being listened to.
Alex, one thing I was really curious about with as much travel as you do and working in other markets, I think there's like a big, like jubilant, like, yay, every time a state goes rec legal or has a successful like medical opening. You got in this game because that high barrier of entry was just ridiculous, in your opinion. Are the states repeating that same mistake when you go to these new areas? Is it still do they start off like at a disadvantage? Wrong. Yeah.
I guess it comes down to licensing at that point, right? And my experience with licensing now isn't where it was, obviously, when I was owning and running my labs. I have one in Maine, Bridget Labs, And I had that one in Oakland, but it's really development of licensing. So Nevada, Florida, there's places with extremely limited amount of licensing, and now those licenses are being sold for ridiculous amounts of money versus California, which had temporary licensing, and you could submit a piece of paper and pretty much get going. There's obviously smaller states like Montana where the inspections are easier and quicker to get started, but ultimately it comes down to those licenses to give the market a fair trade. These standards of extraction rooms and safe facilities, they're being adapted nationwide, so that you really can't hide from spending the expense. So the permitting is very universal anywhere you are, even in a place like Maine. C1D1s are still required. Montana, Oklahoma, they won't even give you gas unless you have one of these approved C1D1s. They just give cease and desist letters to a lot of people in Oklahoma for that reason. So, I mean, it's a very common myth to think that my fire marshal doesn't know what he's doing. I'll be okay getting started like this. 99% of the time, you're not going to pass an inspection. And if you do, for some reason, pass an inspection, and there's a fire or something, if you don't go through the proper engineering of developing these facilities in a safe way, you're liable for just about everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's frustrating. I know, like, for us, in a lot lower stakes way, to see people enter the market all excited about one part of their business and not boning up on the rest of it. And for us, for our side, it's the professional sales. It's the idea of like having a business process, having a business behind your product, not just a product to sell. And I hear a lot of people thinking about, like, in states like Oklahoma, where you can just get a processing license that's separate from your grow license. You can apply for it at different times and everything. They seem to come to the idea of extracting late, or they're doing splits with people. And is there, I guess, something to consider if you're getting licensed and you're thinking ahead of with your vision? When do people start thinking about extraction if they're basically starting out as a grower?
I think that really is dependent upon the market that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you look at Montana or Maine, right? So Maine is where we do Bridget Labs, we have Bridget Farms, and we have the Farmhouse, completely vertically integrated company. Because it's a small market, there's no need to have a giant outdoor farm, in my opinion. It's also smart to consider that when you're going through a store and you sell in your own store, your product isn't being sold for $7 a gram, it's being sold for 30, versus wholesale versus storefront, right? Smaller markets, it's much easier to do this in, right? Bigger markets, you have to scale each of these individual pieces much larger to compete. So if you look like Florida, for example, where they require vertical integration, you have to have 20 stores. You have to have distribution to all those stores, with cultivation, manufacturing, the whole 9 yards, which is a big chunk of money to spend, infrastructure to grow. If you don't have the experience, you don't have the expertise, you don't have the capital, that's very tough to do from the new phase one entrepreneur type of idea versus a small market like Maine, where I was saying we could do that vertical integration. So Oklahoma is a great example. They gave a lot of licenses to farmers, and they didn't really cap much. So the price of cannabis bottomed quickly in Oklahoma because of that, because of the plant counts, right? Because the acres
supply
and
and demand
acres that were growing of THC, they flooded the market, right? And that's an issue. If there was vertical integration, chances are someone may not have grown all that, because they would have looked into, okay, how much are we going to manufacture? How much are we going to sell? But from a cultivation side, they said, okay, let's just make as much as possible.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then they end up having to move, they're like, oh, wow, now we have to move it all wholesale because we need to get ready for the next harvest. We need that money back, and we need that. And it's all like playing this game of catch up rather than playing a strategic long game.
100%. And for manufacturing, getting your permits in and getting these designs in, if you're going to be doing manufacturing, needs to be done ahead of time. It's going to be the largest permitting timeline that you have. So strategically making sure that you do that ahead of time is definitely smart. I know a lot of companies who permitted their indoor grow and then waited till that was done to start their manufacturing, expect their manufacturing to follow right after, as far as revenue for their quarterly numbers. And, it doesn't happen like that. It just pop up, right? So having your plan submitted, proper timelines figured out for not only planning and construction, but purchasing as well is necessary. Yeah.
Yeah.
We know, we talked to a number of growers out in the Sooner State, Alex, and we hear a lot of good people. We've met them. We've traveled out. We've been in Tulsa and Oklahoma City recently, seeing a couple grow operations. And I don't know what the number is. Frank probably has it. We just heard about how many people lost their licenses between, I think it was September 2021 and January of 2022. Unbelievable. It was thousands of grow operations, but we hear there's a lot of people out there cutting corners, a lot of unsafe work conditions for a number of operations. And we were just joking before, not joking, of course, it's not a laughing matter. We're wondering, we're like, Alex could probably host like the kitchen nightmare equivalent of grow facilities that he's seen that are a little unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For extraction labs, absolutely.
Really?
There have been times when I've walked into a facility and looked at the person and said, "Look, I don't feel comfortable having this conversation next to your machine.
Wow.
We need to go talk outside. You're welcome to take photos, bring them out, but no way am I going to sit next to a machine that's not safe. I'm not going to build safe laboratories for other people and then put myself in an unsafe situation." But we see it all the time, and it's nerve-wracking. What we've definitely seen. Hopefully, we get there before it's an issue. And that's why we do what we do. So,
is there a common mistake that people make?
Not using an extraction room.
Yeah.
And I don't say that just because I sell the extraction rooms, but like I said, we haven't had one issue inside of. We've had one tiny issue when someone brought in a heat gun, which is not Class 1 Division 1, which is not explosion proof, which should not be inside of a legal facility room. As long as you keep removing the sparks, then a fire needs a spark and oxygen, right? If you can remove the spark, right, you can remove the danger. So all the equipment that you see attached to the extraction equipment inside the room is explosion proof. So you'll see an explosion proof recovery pump on legal facilities, right? That is inside the room. You'll see explosion proof vacuum units if it's done correctly. They have little vacuum units that can be right inside the room. And that's the biggest issue, I think, is that when you're at home doing it, you don't think about all these things. You don't have a professional engineer explaining to you the dilution rate of the air and the purge systems that's required for these extraction rooms, or the explosion proof electronics that we use and the gas sensors. All the safety features are just skipped, right? Yeah. So that's why not only is it the biggest problem, but I found out that's why we needed this solution, because my friends weren't going to stop doing this. We just needed to find an affordable way to get them legal.
It's just it always makes me ask the question. I don't know if people think that cutting corners with safety is really going to give them the edge that they think it's going to. It's unbelievable.
No, they want to get started sooner, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to go through the permitting system. And as you've seen, as soon as the market's profitable, you get shut down, right? Mm-hmm. The largest scale to growth is recreational sales. When you gain that market share, you're golden, right? But there's no point of working so hard to gain medical market share. And then when it switches, get a cease and desist letter, which 90% of the Oklahoma guys got. So now they're going through the whole permitting. Now they're going through the development. Now they're going through the purchasing, which is going to take time, and the bigger companies that set themselves up correctly are just going to steamroll right through and be the only products on the shelves until they have their stuff figured out.
Wow. That is so a critical part of being a pro. And to compete against the bigger companies, you have to set yourself up right from the beginning and then continue to practice the best practices instead of trying to get by or skate or cut corners, like you said, Nick. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing that I know we were talking about when we were kind of huddling up, and I was like, definitely want to make sure I cover this because the people that I know listen and that we talk to out here on the East Coast. We noticed, Alex, that C1D1 on the site, you have, safety plans for dispensaries. We have met so many people between November and now. As you know, New Jersey went rec legal on April 21st. We were there. They were not ready. there was a huge shortage of product. But we've talked to so many people that have, well, we've got the financial back and we got this. We're thinking of applying to get a dispensary license, whether that's in New York, which is still 18 months away or something like that, or Jersey. Alex, what kind of services do you offer to people in that niche that are like, well, we're filing the paperwork? What work are you doing with dispensaries? Because there's a whole new market opening up out here.
We can obviously help with architectural designs and designing the facility, but our specialty comes with the fire protection engineers, right? And having a PE fire protection engineer with a lot of experience and background will create a nice safety report, which is often used as one of the categories of a point system, which are very oftenly used for dispensaries to figure out who's most prepared to take this corner of the street and sell product so that the city can do, the best it can in creating revenue. Because unlike manufacturing, you can only have so many dispensaries, right? You could have a lot of hidden manufacturers and buildings and so forth, but normally a city will limit the amount of storefronts that you have. In places like Oklahoma, you see that that's obviously not so true. But you'll see more of these stricter zoning and permitting and licensing in places like New Jersey and New York. So getting competitive with how well you're prepared for your submittal is really our expertise.
So if we're staying with just dispensaries for a second, almost tangentially, if I'm a consumer and I know I want to get some extracts, I'm not into the flower this time, so I'm going to buy some extracts. Is there anything that I should be looking for when I'm shopping, either on a label, I should be asking a bud tender about, I should notice about the product and the color and the whatever, that makes it better in terms of experience or quality on the extraction side?
Because I know products so well, my suggestion would be go home and Google this before you get to the dispensary, so I don't sit behind you and wait for 20 minutes.
Oh my God, that's the best answer.
Also, the bud tenders half the time don't know, right? I mean, they're not pharmacists selling drugs, right? These are homies that sell weed. So the biggest myth of it all is indica sativa, right?
Yeah.
Long time ago, someone looked at the plant and this one's short and fat, let me call it this in a Latin word. This one's tall and skinny, let me call it this in a Latin word. They weren't smoking it, writing down their effects and so forth, right? And we're so far down this hybrid genetic cross system that it's very difficult to say that indica is going to put you in the couch and sativa is going to wake you up, right? There's many different things that go into it, including the terpene flavors and the flavonoids and the compound composition of the product. Is how much THC does it have, how much CBD does it have, how much CBN does it have. As you know, CBN is what makes you tired, right? CBD counter affects the THC effect. So those compounds, the terpenes, these are what actually make you feel things, right? So the biggest thing when you go into a store, whether it's flower or extract, is to start with that basic knowledge of how is the product going to make me feel, because there's a good chance that the bud tender is not really sure how it's going to make you feel. They're just going off that sativa thing, right? And they don't want to get into a 20-minute conversation, so they don't want to start this conversation, which they might know. So it's very much like a at-home research thing, and that's the same with anything you're going to digest, right? Whether it's food,
should be,
or medicine, right? So
yeah, definitely should be. We know that we've got something we want to talk to you about with as far as the future, where you're headed with C1D1 and also butane extraction equipment. So we know there's a lot of maybe it's just us, Francesca. We want to think there's a lot of opportunity about to unfold here on the East Coast, Alex. But where are you guys headed? What are you looking to do as these markets open up?
East Coast is big for us right now. We're working in Ohio, we're working in Montana, we're working in Maine, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Virginia. We just developed extraction facility for SunMed in Maryland. They're running our butane extraction systems that we've just developed and designed and released.
Nice.
Virginia as well. All the way down to Florida. We're licensed in all these areas. They're looking for the professionals with the experience, like you guys have been saying, to minimize their planning period and get to market as soon as possible. And having the background we do, the municipalities are definitely appreciating that. We're excited. We're definitely moving forward heavy with butane extraction equipment. Ethanol extraction is kind of dissipating. There's definitely a few big companies that are still in the market for ethanol, edible companies and distillate companies, but you're seeing more live resin edibles and more live resin pens, which are full spectrum, healthier products.
Yeah.
And they don't cost as much to make, right?
Can you get into that a little bit, like the difference between a distillate and a full resin and a resin, and just kind of like why one is better than the other?
Sure. So when you're making distillate, you're really just isolating the molecule THC. You're trying to get a pen to be 90% THC, right? So you're removing a lot of the terpenes and a lot of other cannabinoids and isolating just that one particular compound, versus like we were saying, when you're smoking flower or a live resin oil, butane extraction, if it's not refined, if it's just coming up the machine and post-processed with removal of the butane and however you want it shaped, whether it's shatter or batter or crumble, it's full spectrum, meaning it has all the cannabinoids, it has all the flavonoids, it has all the terpenes, and it hasn't been refined yet to isolate a product. When you're making distillate, what you'll see is that's cryogenic extraction with ethanol. It doesn't capture a lot of those terpenes initially, right? So you're not going to have the flavor in your product that you do in BHO. So when you dab a BHO product, you're going to initially go, wow, that lemon taste is really great. Like the lemon haze, I can really taste it, right? When you're smoking a distillate pen, after you've filtered the fats and lipids and gone through your white film evaporation, which is again distillation, which is focused on a boiling point of one compound, you then add normally terpenes back into the product to make it a flavor, right? And 90% of the time they're not cannabis terpenes, right? They're some random plant terpene compound that they put into your pen. So now you're not even smoking cannabis, right?
I had no idea that was the difference. That's really cool to know.
Botanical, right? Botanical terpenes.
Yep, that's what I've heard.
You see it all the time. Yeah. Wow.
Nowadays, we're seeing more and more and more steam distillation being done with these hemp farms, right? Which steam distillation will create clear terps, which can be added right in pens. And now you're seeing companies take Delta 8, right? Which is a conversion of CBD, which is legal in multiple states. Now mix it with hemp terps and sell a THC with hemp terp derived substances online across the country. Like, and then there's a lot of new opportunity with not only with Delta 8, but with live resin and butane extraction on so many levels. We're very excited to get into it. Obviously, that's my experience as an extractor. I started at one of the first butane labs in Oakland, so I'm very excited to now be selling our systems to companies all across the world, and that's where my expertise is. So we're definitely on the next leg where we're going to start shining. You're going to see a lot of our equipment manufacture a lot of the main products that you see on shelves, which is exciting for us.
That is cool, because I do see the market. I mean, there's over 113 different like cannabinoids. I think the last time I looked up the number that was the closest estimate. And it was like, as we're isolating different ones and seeing like how we can, produce them to a higher effect to get something out of that specific cannabinoid. Is that something that the extraction world is driving? And like, oh, look, we came up with this process to do this thing, or like, hey guys, if you isolate this and then, multiply it, you get this. Is that extraction based, or is that extraction is like chasing that and finding out like, okay, now we got to build something to extract this? I mean, is there a difference in that process?
Depends what you're doing and what your business plan is, right? If your business plan is to own a retail store and sell dabs, probably not. However, if you're a GMP hemp facility, right, who feeds these cannabinoids to pharmaceutical companies then yes. There is a bright future in creating formulations with these cannabinoids, in addition to isolating them and introducing them to current case studies, which is a massive market for companies that have facilities built to federal standards that haven't really been fully developed, right? Based upon prior industries and standards that I've helped develop with GMP. These facilities have these clean standards and clean facilities and equipment built to these clean standards. They're the ones that are isolating these compounds and probably selling to pharmaceutical companies. As a consumer, it's pretty rare that I'll be purchasing some sort of isolate powder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and it sucks that for consumers too, as new formulations are happening, even like something like Delta 8 coming to the market. Alex, you'd be floored. We've been around representatives from companies that are like, here, try this Delta 8 sample. What's in it? What's in the formulation? Whatever. I don't know. I think that
nothing.
The education's going to have to step up at like the point of service so that consumers know exactly what they're getting, whether it's live resin or whether it's a Delta 8 product or a new formulation. Because some of this is a little scary to consider, when it
absolutely. I would always ask for analytical tests on my Delta 8 when you get it. You want to ensure that acid's been neutralized. There's a lot of unknown variables when you do conversions. And really the only way to know your product is that when it's done, take it to an analytical lab, get it tested, right? And that's the trust you have in your recreational market, is that all the products already been tested versus buying something from a hemp manufacturer without the same state requirements for distribution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, so look, I know that we were lucky enough to get a window of your time where you weren't extremely busy. We're so grateful you talked to us today, Alex. I do know for a fact when this is going to go up on our site, we will have already had conversations with people in some of these markets that we mentioned. How do these people get in touch with you and your team at C1D1?
C1D1Labs.org is the best, or our Instagram, C1D1 Labs.
Okay.
You search for that, you might see our backup accounts as well. We have a few.
Everybody had.
That just means you've been in this for quite some time.
Exactly.
In our
That's experience. I've survived Instagram war.
It means you're a seasoned veteran of that Instagram war. Absolutely. So I look for you.
Yeah, definitely on that, man. So we have links as well to our other side companies, butane extraction equipment, also another Instagram, butaneextractionequipment.com. We're very SEO friendly, so if you have a hard time finding us, I'm sure the second or first page of Google can definitely find us if you just go ahead and search our keywords.
Absolutely. We're going to put up your social handles, and we're going to put up your website too for our audience. And please check out the site too. Like I sit there and learn as I'm reading through and checking out the work you're doing and reading through the blogs. I was wondering if you'd be so kind to just play along on a couple of goofy questions with us, Alex. We like to do this with all our guests. Are you game?
I'm always game. I'm a pretty goofy guy.
All right. I'm going to go right back to this. I'm going to get one from me and one from Francesca. We're going to go to the Pivo questionnaire. Remember that Inside the Actors Studio dude? No. Remember when Will Ferrell impersonated him? Well, he would ask the same questions to people, and I'm going to ask, Alex, give us a sound or noise that you hate. Oh, wow. That's got a
They call them cheeseburger birds.
Really?
And I love it. I love the birds. They remind us of home.
Okay.
But 6:00 every morning, right outside my window, are these cheeseburger birds. And they're notoriously known in Tahoe for just being extremely loud. But you call back to them and you can have conversations. They're really cool birds, but I don't like being woken up.
No, I know. Yeah. Okay. The cheeseburger birds. That would creep me out. It's got a very BioShock kind of sound to it for me. That, all right, Alex, sound or noise that you love?
I got one. Slot machine.
Oh, ding, 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 ding. We got it. Outstanding. I love both of those. The cheeseburger birds going in the file. Now, Francesca, you have a scenario that we love to do with our guests. Francesca has a would you rather for Alex.
Yeah. So I could extract. Would you rather wake up tomorrow and find yourself as a centaur, as in like half man, half horse, or a merman?
Ooh.
That is difficult.
Right?
Horses can't swim. And do mermaids go on land? They don't go on land.
No, they don't.
Not for long.
Are there mermaids?
Yes.
Then I'd be a merman.
There you go. There you go. Oh. My literature teacher impulses were coming back. I was like, man, centaurs were rowdy sons of bitches, though. They were some. But I think I'd go with Alex too. Got to go.
I mean, you have a career with Old Spice for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Listen, Alex, I can't thank you enough for giving us your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure being able to spend this time with you. We really appreciate you being on.
Yeah.
Nick,
Thanks for teaching us so much. We really appreciate it.
Nick, Francesca, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, man. Thank you so much. Look, our guest has been Alex Barsky, C1D1 Labs, butane extraction equipment. We're going to give you the links. Check him out. And please, if you could use this gentleman's advice, seek him out, get in contact with him. It's been the Infused Show. Alex Barsky's been our guest. We're going to see you next time from Delaware. Bye-bye.
Bye.